Hello everyone and welcome to our continuing series of Witchwood card reviews. We're going to be going through all the cards in this in the Hunter class now, along with some deck lists, some kind of provisional theorycraft deck lists that we've got. So without any further ado, let's get started. First up we have Amorous. Amorous is a 10 mana 8/8 legendary dragon for Hunter, and it reads Battle Cry, double the attack and health of all minions in your hand.
We didn't expect, we say we didn't expect any dragons, and then, there are a few dragons, but one of the few dragons is this big hunter thing, which I think is absolute trash.
Yeah, Amorous definitely has some meme potential, making a big King Crush or something like that in your hand, but I don't really think Amorous will see any play. I mean, it just does nothing, and it's a 10 drop, and Hunter doesn't really want to do that. If Hunter wants to play a long game plan, it's going to be on the back of Deathstalker Rexar, not on the back of Amorous. So for me, Amorous is going to be a 1. And for you, Sam?
Yeah, it's going to be a 1.
Okay.
It's just a big bundle of stats, and just to explain to, let's say, newer players why basically it doesn't have any immediate impact. And the doubling effect is more of a win more, because if you're playing minions after Amorous you're probably already winning.
Yeah, if you're in a situation where you have a bunch of minions in your hand on turn 10 and you're not dying by playing Amorous, you're probably in a very good position as Hunter anyway.
Yeah.
And a quick note on the scale that we're using. We kind of mentioned it in the first video, so you can go back and check there as well. The scale is, we're going to be doing a 1 to 5 scale. Where 1 is kind of trash cards like Amorous, and like Cataclysm or Sneaky Devil from previous expansions. 2 are kind of fringe or tech cards. Maybe they'll see some play occasionally in decks, usually as tech cards like Dragon Slayer from Kobolds and Catacombs, and then which actually would be pretty good against Amorous, although it still wouldn't kill it. And then we have 3, which is your like playable or niche archetype cards. So cards that sometimes do well in a specific archetype, or maybe they're playable coming in and out of a wider variety of decks. These are cards like Plated Beetle. And then 4, you have staple or like deck defining cards. So these are cards that make a deck good. Or that are staples across multiple decks in a class, or if they're neutral, across multiple decks, across multiple classes. So some examples of this are like Skull of Minari and Wandering Monster. And for 5, these are really like meta-defining cards. They often define how a class plays across all of its, or across many of its decks, or they define the by far most powerful archetype for a class, and therefore they also define the meta as a whole. So this is cards like Call to Arms. Call to Arms is affected like all mid-range decks because they all had to keep up with that power turn that Paladin had, and it's also a card that we see in pretty much every single Paladin deck. So yeah, that's our scale. And Amorous falls comfortably in the 1 trash tier ranking here. Next up, we have Houndmaster Shaw. Houndmaster Shaw is a 4 mana 3/6 legendary minion with the text reading, your other minions have rush. So this is quite an interesting effect. It's the only effect in the set that actually gives other minions rush. And it's a little bit reminiscent of something like Tundra Rhino, but instead of giving charge to only beasts, it's giving rush to everything. And it has a bit of a better stat line.
Yeah, so I'm a big fan. For me, this card screams sort of Fandral meets Tundra Rhino, because one of the main issues with Tundra Rhino was the fact that it was a very badly statted minion. 5 mana for a 2/5 charge.
Yeah.
Was usually struggled to impact the board really well. Whereas I think even though Houndmaster Shaw himself doesn't have rush or charge, developing a 4 mana 3/6 I think contests the board quite well a lot of the times. And it's that it becomes that threat more than the fact that your 5-drop can have rush. So whether that's Bitter-Tide Hydra, whether that's the Wolves from a Spellstone, it's that impending threat. It's the same with Fandral, which constantly threaten Nourish, right? That was the power turn.
Yeah, and the Spellstone is a very good power play after Houndmaster Shaw. And the one nice thing about that is the way we see a lot of the kind of or Spell Hunter play out right now is they play kind of secrets in the early game, and then that often results in your opponent kind of waiting until they have a good time to pop the secrets. And then if you play Houndmaster Shaw, you're going to kind of force them into action, and then your secrets can protect your Houndmaster Shaw and allow your Spellstone to come down and have more impact. And if a Spellstone comes down for 3 or 4 wolves and they have Rush, that's going to be a very, very powerful turn, especially if your opponent's kind of just been sitting on their board trying to make the best use of it. So I think Houndmaster Shaw could be quite powerful in quite a few decks, particularly Midrange Hunter decks. That it's not a card that's going to help you go face, but it's a card that's going to help you control the board, and that's really something that Hunter's always thrived off of doing, and has really allowed it to push its aggressiveness later in the game with cards like Savannah Highmane is obviously also a really good card that goes with Houndmaster Shaw. So for me, I'm going to be giving it a rating of 4.
Yeah, for me it's also a 4. I think it's a strong card. I think that it will see play in Midrange Hunter and possibly some other Hunter archetypes as well.
Yep. So next up we have Rat Trap. Rat Trap is the Hunter secret for the set. It's a 2-mana epic secret. After your opponent plays 3 cards in a turn, summon a 6/6 rat. So 2 mana for a 6/6 seems extremely powerful, but the big question is, how often is this actually going to get procced?
Yeah, that's kind of like part of the good and bad thing of this is the fact that it won't be proc means it will be sitting there for a while, in terms of possibly making your opponent question what it is. 3 cards in a turn. I mean, some aggro decks play that sometimes. Most of the times they play 1 or 2 cards a turn.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously your combo decks, so your decks like Miracle Rogue, or your I love rogue decks like to play more than possibly 3 cards in a turn. But I'm not sure if this is worth running in your deck as a card, right?
Yeah. And I mean, I think Catrick's rotating out, and then if we compare Rat Trap to Catrick, I think one of the big problems is that the rat that you get from Rat Trap is, it doesn't have stealth. It has no way of protecting itself. So if your opponent's playing something like Miracle Rogue, and let's say their 3rd card in the turn is a prep, they can then sap your rat, and then sure, you get the rat back in your hand, and now it's going to take even longer for it to actually have any effect on the board. So even in those scenarios, it might not necessarily work that well as a tech card. And I think at best it'll be a tech card. And I honestly don't see there being anywhere near enough decks for it to actually be a good tech card against right now. Maybe in future metas it could be a little bit better if there's more cards that care about playing more cards more decks that care about playing more cards in a turn. But right now, I mean, I'd have to say it's always going to pretty much remain a tech card.
Yeah, a very niche tech card. So for me, it's a 2.
Yeah.
For that reason. So, I mean, like you say, we could see it one day. That could be the answer, right?
Yeah, maybe. The one other problem I have with it is, like, if it's a combo deck that actually kills you with a combo, then the rat is going to do absolutely nothing. Because the rat is just going to be on the board and watch you die. So it doesn't really work against those kind of combo decks either. Next up, we have Toxmonger. Toxmonger is a 4-mana 2/4 epic minion. Whenever you play a 1-cost minion, give it poisonous. So, some people have speculated this is something to kind of work with decks like Quest Hunter to kind of make your 1-drop scale a little bit better in the late game. For me, I don't really see this card being you're seeing any play, even in a Quest Hunter deck, which is not a good deck at all. It doesn't really make sense to play a 4-mana 2/4. It has a really low impact on the turn you play it. You pretty much need to combo it with some 1-drop on that immediate turn. And I mean, the best kind of options for that are like Stone Tusk Boar or Elven Archer. And even that, I don't want to. That's a 5-mana 2-card combo that removes a single minion. That's not good.
Yeah, not like the fact that it's a 4-mana 2/4. I'm really sitting there going, no thank you. I'd rather not, I'd rather play Houndmaster Shaw. I'd rather play a Houndmaster.
Yeah.
I'd rather play Flanking Strike.
Or Hunter's Mark.
Or Hunter's Mark. Or hell, I would even rather play Wing Blast.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, there's a lot of other cards that can give you pretty much similar effects, honestly, in many
Yeah.
ways. And Toxmongo only really ever going to work if it sticks on the board for long. And at 2/4 stats, it's not going to be sticking on the board. So, so Toxmaster is going to be a 1 from me.
Yeah, I think it's also, for me, it's also a 1. You know, I think it's continuing the trend of really bad Hunter epics.
Yeah. And another Hunter Dragon we have here, Carrie and Drake. Carrie and Drake is a 5-mana 3/7 dragon with Battle Cry. If a minion died this turn, gain Poisonous. So let's look at the two kind of conditions. It's not unusual for a Hunter to be trading minions, so it's maybe not that hard to activate Carrie and Drake. And if it comes down as a 5-mana 3/7 with Poisonous, is that really worth it?
I don't know. Like, I was like, is it? Because the high health does possibly mean it can trade multiple times.
I mean, probably twice at most, right?
Yeah, but I'm trying to work out if that's what you want to be doing on turn 5 is a 3/7. Even though it has poisonous, it still feels a bit low impact. So I'm not 100% sure. I think I gave this card quite. I think I gave it a 1.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not sold on it. Maybe it becomes a total creep of the set. You know, the fact that you can activate it regularly.
No, it doesn't reduce in cost, and the effect is not powerful. Poisonous is not that powerful, because there's so many ways for your opponent to play around this. Like there's any removal options are good. Or they can, trade some smaller minions. I just don't see it being useful. I'd rather always play the Spellstone on 5, basically. It takes some setup, but I'd rather play Tundra Rhino on 5. I'd rather play Stranglethorn Tiger on 5.
Yeah.
Because Stranglethorn Tiger is a beast, and Hunter has beast synergies. It does not have dragon synergies.
Yeah, I think that's also, there's no real support around the card.
Yeah.
Let's ask you a question. If it was a beast, would you play it?
No, probably not still. But it would definitely be not just a 1. I think it would maybe be like a 2 if it was a beast, but as a dragon, it's a 1. Until we really find the Dustbreaker for Hunter.
Okay, fair enough.
Next up, we have Wing Blast. Wing Blast is a 4-mana rare spell for Hunter. It reads, deal 4 damage to a minion. If a minion died this turn, this costs 1. So you can play 1 Wing Blast to kill something, and then the second one will cost 1, or you can trade a minion or use your weapon in order to kill a minion off, and then you can play your Wing Blast for 1, which, sounds pretty powerful. 1 mana 4 damage. Big problem is it can't go face, so it's in that way it's not really comparable to something like Soulfire. I think the best comparison for me is actually Hunter's Mark. Hunter's Mark is kind of arguably better a lot of the times because it does more damage, and the minion condition that it requires you to kill is basically just trading one of your minions or using a weapon. So the precondition you have to get Wing Blast to 1 mana is to have a minion you can trade or to have a weapon, and that same precondition is kind of filled by Hunter's Mark, and Hunter's Mark is always 1, So in that way, I think often Hunter's Mark can be a bit better. The one scenario Wing Blast is a bit better is if you don't have any way to fill the condition and you just need to remove a 4-drop. If you're playing like a Control Hunter or maybe a Spell Hunter, where you might not have minions, on the board to trade. And I think the other big problem I have is for Midrange Hunters, Wing Blast is in a scenario where you need to be 2 minions behind on the board for Wing Blast to be good, because you need to be able to trade into 1 and Wing Blast the second. And that's a problem because Hunters never really want to be in that situation. And usually if you are 2 minions behind on board, that means you don't have any minions. Or it needs to be you need to be 1 minion behind, but they need to have at least 2. In order for it to kind of work. So I actually think Wing Blast at first was a card I was pretty hyped on, but I've definitely come down on my rating of it. I actually think it's probably going to be like a 3, maybe bordering on a 4.
For me, it's a 4. I still think it's a solid removal option, even though there's going to be times where obviously it does nothing, or when you have to play it. I think, like I said in the previous video, even at 4 mana deal 4 damage, it's not the worst possible card, and it can still it's not completely dead.
Yeah, it does have... Its fail condition is not horrible, but it's definitely not the... the best kind of fail condition for Hunter that also has the availability of cards like Flanking Strike. So I think it's definitely going to be a card that could find the right meta, but I don't think it's going to be super powerful in like any given meta. And the other thing to quickly mention about Wing Blast is like one of the best uses of Hunter's Mark right now is on Void Lords, and going forward will be too. And Wing Blast does nothing for Void Lords to help you against that, so that's kind of that's an issue for me as well. But we don't want to kind of talk about everything in context of Void Lord and Warlock, because that's going to make everything look bad as well. Anyway, so moving on to the next card, we have Duskhaven Hunter. Duskhaven Hunter is a 3-mana 2/5 rare minion with stealth, and it also reads, each turn this is in your hand, swap its attack and health. So it can be a 5/2 or a 2/5. It's one of the kind of Worgen themed cards we have in this expansion.
I prefer the more scientific term, swappy cards.
Swappy cards. Flippy floppy cards.
I think it's a more scientifically accurate term, right?
Yeah. Rather than Worgen or Transform or...
Exactly, swappy.
Yeah, swappy, okay. So what do you think of this swappy card?
Like, it's one of those... the problem is the fact that you can't really choose when it is. The fact that it has stealth helps a lot.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure. Like, in an aggressive hunter, you're gonna want it. Obviously, as a 3-mana 5/2.
Yeah.
Which means you're going to want it not in your opening hand. You're gonna want to draw it on turn 2. You're gonna win it.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, as a mid-range hunter, you might want it as a 2/5 to trade, but I don't think you really want the 3-mana 2/5 option that much.
Yeah.
Although maybe, 3-mana 2/5 into... Oh, it's not a beast.
It's not a beast. That's the big problem.
I was gonna say, Hardmaster, and then they are.
Yeah, Carrie and Grab as a 3-mana 2/4 never saw any
That's
real
2/5.
play. Oh, is it also a 2/5?
It did see some play though, actually.
Well, I would still give Carrie and Grab a 2 at best with the amount of play that it saw.
Yeah.
So, for me, Duskhaven Hunter, it's not a beast, so it doesn't work there. And 3 cost is probably the most contested slot in Hunter, with Eaglehorn Bow, Animal Companion, Kill Command, Unleash. That's not often a 3-drop, but there's a lot of 3 cost options in Hunter. Yeah, Bear Shark as well. And I think there's a few more in this set that are actually looking pretty decent. So for that reason, I kind of don't actually see Duskhaven Hunter seeing much play. The other problem I have is even in its better case when it's a 5/2, it's very, very vulnerable to AoE.
Well, it's like Jungle Panther, basically.
Sure,
right?
It is, except once again, unlike Jungle Panther, it doesn't have the Beast tag, so it doesn't activate any of your Beast synergies like Kill Command if you need that for reach. So I think that's one of the issues I have with Duskhaven Hunter. And with Defile running around, if you are playing an aggro deck, you have a 1-drop, and a Duskhaven Hunter as a 5/2 on the board, chances are Defile's going to clear both of those. Because
but you can't really use that argument. That goes for nearly any card, really.
Sure, but what I'm saying is 2 health is very, very vulnerable to AoE right now.
Yeah.
So a 5/2 is pretty bad.
Yeah.
That's the issue I have. There's a lot more AoE that's going to kill a 5/2 than there are targeted abilities right now, which is why the stealth on the 5/2 doesn't actually make that much of a difference, in my opinion. So I think I'm going to give Duskhaven Hunter a 2.
Yeah, I'm going to give it 3 because as much as you've said it's weakness, it's still not the worst 3-drop. Although I think I actually might be leaning more to a 2 after realizing it does clash with a lot of Hunter 3-drops. So I think our second thought is actually going to be closer to it. I think I'm going to make it a 2. Because then I realized, I was like, wait, you just play nearly any of the other 3-drops instead of it.
Yeah. And then next up we have Gaia Frenzy. Gaia Frenzy is a 4-mana hunter spell. It's a common. It reads, give a beast +3/+3, shuffle 3 copies into your deck with +3/+3. So you're shuffling in 3 buffed copies. It's like a weaker Blessing of Kings that can only hit beasts. And obviously shuffling in the copies is a bit of an issue for Hunter. That is a class that traditionally lacks a bit of card draw.
Yeah, so it's a case of, you either need to try and, I don't think there's not many ways of 2-string it. Besides, if they're 1-drops, you can use the 12-year, what's his name?
12-year Warden.
Yeah, but otherwise than that, you're just gonna have to hope that at some point in the game you draw the buff copies for it to be good, right?
Yeah, there's kind of two directions to take that work with this. I mean, Stone Tusk Boar and 12-Year Warden is the one way to kind of get them immediately back to your hand. And the other one is using some kind of Katharina synergy. Obviously, the Katharina option is a lot slower, so that can be a bit of an issue. And, you could use like Katharina with a charged Devil Saw or something like that, but you actually need your charged Devil Saw in that to survive, which is pretty difficult, whereas the Stone Dusk Boar, you can actually play at the same turn as your Dire Frenzy, and then it's kind of like 5 mana for 4 damage, which is pretty inefficient, but if you can follow that up with some 1 mana 4 damage minions, then maybe you can make something of that.
Yeah, so it all comes down to, how if you can get these reliably, the extra copies into your hand, right? Because, I mean, I think we can kind of agree that 4 mana just +3/+3 to Beast is very underwhelming.
Yeah. I think that the card is not going to be very good. I don't think the deck, the one we're talking about, is really that great a deck. I think Gaia Frenzy is definitely kind of a build-around card. So I'm actually going to give it a 3, which is, I think, a higher number than it deserves if we look at this compared to other cards. But it's really because of what we are kind of representing 3 as. To me, it is the card that makes the niche archetype that makes Dire Frenzy work, if you know what I mean. So, like, it's a key card in that niche archetype, which I don't think is going to be very good, but it is, like, the card that matters. So for that, it's going to be a 3, although realistically, it's probably kind of closer to a 2 in terms of pure power level.
Yeah, for me, I gave it straight a 2. So I think it's gonna be a fringe card. Maybe it makes a combo, but I don't see the combo being consistent enough. That's kind of my issue.
Yeah. Next up, we have. Next up, we have Hunting Mastiff. Hunting Mastiff is a 2 mana 2/1 beast. It's a common and it has Echo and Rush. So Hunting Mastiff, it's like a bluegill warrior that can't go face in many ways with Echo attached to it. Is it really worth it? I mean, it can kind of synergize with something like the Dire Frenzy we just mentioned, but the problem is that doesn't really help your echoed versions of it. Even, if you were to draw the new buffed one, the echoed versions wouldn't have the buff. So that doesn't really work as well as you would hope. And there isn't really any way to get it, unlike Stone Tusk Boar, directly from your deck. So Hunting Mastiff, I mean, it can synergize with buffs immediately, but that just means you're playing less of them, so that's probably not worth it. So 2 mana deal 2 damage for Hunter. That's basically what it comes down to.
Some of the synergies, it does synergize with the effects like Leox effect. I mean, if you want to play Timberwolf, it does synergize potentially with Scavenging Hyena.
Yeah. Can make you a very big Scavenger Hyena, much like a really expensive Unleash.
Yeah, well, I mean, what if you play? I mean, it could be more damage than Unleash potentially.
Yeah, it's better against a singular big, or it's better against less big minions. Yeah.
Narrow and tall.
Narrow and tall, as we put it. So, like 1 or 2 big minions, then Unleash. But it's a lot worse than Unleash against a wider board. Especially when you consider the Scavenger Hyena kind of synergy as well.
Yeah.
So I'm not particularly high on Hunting Mastiff. I don't think it's a horrible card, but I don't think it's going to see much play. Maybe in a few decks, but I think at most it's going to be a 2 for me.
For me, I'm going to give it a 3 because I still think it is playable, and I foresee that I think the synergies might be enough to make it playable.
Okay, and then I think that's our final card is Vilebrood Skitterer. Vilebrood Skitterer is a 5 mana 1/3 beast. It's a common and it has Poisonous and Rush. So it's like a bad Assassinate because it can't go through Taunt. I mean, it could survive, but at 1/3 stats, that's pretty unlikely. You're going to have to Beast Your Wrathness to make it survive.
Oh my.
Or Death Speaker, and I don't think that any of those effects are realistically going to make Vilebrood Skitterer playable.
On turn 8 or turn 6.
Yeah,
not really what you want to be doing.
these sound like terrible things in a world where I just have Hunter's Mark available to me as a hunter once again. So I'm going to be giving Varbrood Skitterell 1.
Yeah, I think that's a solid 1 for me. It just reeks of super trash.
Yeah. Okay, so those are all the cards we have for Hunter, but now we're going to have a look at some of the theory crafted deck lists we have. First up, we have the Midrange Hunter deck that you've kind of come up with here. We have some of the new cards that feature are the Vicious Scalehide, which is a 2-mana 1/3 rush and lifesteal neutral minion. The Marsh Drake, which is a 3-mana 5/4 that gives your opponent a 2/1 poisonous Drake Hunter or something.
Drake Slayer.
Drake Slayer, that's what it is. And Houndmaster Shore, Wing Blast. Yeah, I think that's all the new moons, right?
I also put in that 1 Vicious Scalehide. I'm not sure, like, there's a 2-drop. I'm not sure how good it is, but...
yeah, I did mention that one, yeah.
Alright, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that one, Vicious Scalehide kind of synergizes with the Crackling Razormaw that you see in the deck as well. It kind of works a bit there. It works, obviously, with, like, the Leok effect if you do get that off the Animal Companion. And it's sometimes cheap enough to combo with cards like Houndmaster as well. So, I mean, that is some synergy. I don't think Vicious Scalehide is going to be worth playing in Hunter. But, you know, you obviously wanted to go for a pretty high tempo sort of mid-range deck here with, you know, Houndmaster Shore into Bittertide Hydra obviously being a standout combo for Houndmaster Shore.
Yeah, also, I mean, if you ever get the, you know, much like Tangerano, if you obviously ever get the Savannah Harmane, you know, can trade into a bigger guy, and then the Hyenas can trade as well.
Yeah.
This is the kind of deck that's very reminiscent of old school mid-range hunters. You know, those that just aim to put like moderately sized beefy minions.
Yeah.
And I mean, now one of the sort of combos is you can kind of look at is Candleshot and the Marsh Drake. So the fact that you know, you play a 3-mana 5/4, having set up a turn 1 Candleshot, and a 3-mana 5/4 is pretty strong.
Yeah. Even if it is a dragon and doesn't really have any
kind of
beast synergy, you know, you can kill off that 2/1 with the candle shots, and I think that's one of the better combos out there to work well with Marsh Drake. Marsh Drake obviously can be a bit situational if you don't find the candle shot first, but you've got so many options on 3 that's not so much of a problem in Hunter.
Yeah, so I mean, cards, like notable cards I haven't put in is, so I've tried to keep this sort of a more classic mid-range build, so there's no secrets or secret synergies. You know, because then, you know, it changes the deck quite substantially. I mean, that's also another avenue, you know, that the deck can go in as well.
Yeah.
But just that's not the direction I went in.
Yeah.
Cards also, Deadly Shot didn't make the cut as well. You know, like we're saying, the 3-drop slot is always quite highly contested.
Yeah. Neither did Hunter's Mark with the candle shot. I mean, you basically chosen to go for something like Wing Blast instead.
Yeah, I mean, it is one of those. Maybe I could have put a Hunter's Mark, but it's all about trying to balance. You know, just keep having a high tempo deck, because the problem is, as soon as you put too much removal in, then obviously it slows down your tempo quite a bit.
Yeah, I think one of the important things with some of these decks that we're going to show is that, like, some of them are also meant to kind of show off the new cards, so this is a good way of, like, testing out some of the new cards, and, you know, maybe a card like Wing Blast or Marsh Drake or Vicious Scalehide, then maybe they're not reliable enough and they don't work out often enough, and then you kind of maybe change the deck based on that. Like, personally, I can't really see playing Houndmaster Shore without the Spellstone. I feel like they synergize a little bit too well, and the Spellstone is pretty much one of the most powerful things you can do in Hunter right now. So yeah, I mean, I definitely think that there could definitely be a mid-range shell out there though. So let's have a look at the next deck. The next deck we have is a Face Hunter, an odd Face Hunter deck that I came up with here. I think the one big thing is it's basically a deck full of 1-drops and 3-drops and Baku. And then there's the 3/5 drops in the Hydra and the Leroy, which can give you, you know, either damage from hand or the big stats. So Baku, obviously a card you never want to draw in this deck, but will upgrade your hero power at the beginning of the game. And then we also have some of the kind of synergies you mentioned as well here. We have Candle Shot with the Marsh Drake, as well as a bunch of the 1-drops that can also trade quite well into the 2-1, like Lepanome. Works quite well if you just trade it in there. We've got the Duskhaven Hunter here. Ultimately, I don't think it'll make the cut, even in Face Hunter. But it's there for the dream scenarios when it is a 5-2 and it manages to connect to face. Another interesting card is Hench Clan Thug, which is a 3-mana 3/3 that when your hero attacks, gets +1/+1. So that's another card that synergizes with having Candle Shot or the Eaglehorn Bow setup. And obviously, with this being an odd deck, there's no secrets or Spellstone either, because the Spellstone without any secret synergy doesn't really work out. And we've also gone for an Ironbeak Owl versus the like the Spellbreakers that were in your deck, so we have a way to get through those pesky Void Lords.
Oh, yes, pesky Void Lords.
Yeah, and I think the one big thing that was difficult for me when building this was figuring out what the 1-drops were. I kind of toyed a lot with some of them, and ultimately, like, Diamol stayed in for the Beast synergy, but without a Crackling Razormaw, I'm not sure Diamol is necessarily worth it. I might even want to just play an extra Emerald Reaver, and the other card that I toyed with a bit was Wretched Tiller, because it can kind of get you some more aggressive damage. If it gets to attack face, it's 3 damage to face, and that's kind of the name of the game in Face Hunter, is dealing damage to face. So I think getting the balance of the 1-drops and the 3-drops right is definitely going to be key. But I mean, you're basically just playing 1-drops and 3-drops and Baku.
And you're right, definitely right.
Yeah. And I mean, the key thing here is that you can go fast and hopefully kill decks like Warlock before they can kind of stabilize. And they are losing Mistress of Mixtures, so that's some healing they lose in some early game. So you're definitely going to have to try and kill them quite fast. And then next up we have... sorry, give me a second. Next up we have a deck built around Gaia Frenzy. So this is that Gaia Frenzy Stone Tusk Boar combo we talked about. A deck that I built that I don't really think is particularly that great, but this is kind of an idea of how the deck is going to look. It is so I've gone for the secret package with the Spellstone as well. For like a power turn, and there's not really like it's not like an OTK combo kind of deck. It's just a way of getting a lot of tempo with the Stone Tusk Boars when you actually draw them, thanks to the Torvia Wardens, and getting them buffed up. The other thing is that it's quite an aggressive deck. It's quite low curve, and you've also got like the Spellbreakers and stuff to really kind of push the aggressive route. 1 mana 4 damage is a good way of also pushing an aggressive option. And then I've also got Hunting Mastiffs in there. Ultimately, not really a card that's probably going to make the cut, especially in a somewhat congested secret slot when you kind of want to be playing a secret on 2 most of the time. But it does synergize quite well with the Hunter's Mark that's in there as well. And even for sometimes activating Kill Command in the late game. And then, of course, Unleash the Hounds. It also summons 1 mana charging Hounds. So those can work pretty much like the Stone Tusk Boar if you don't find the Stone Tusk Boar, in order to buff them up with a Gaia Frenzy, and then you can Torvia Warden. But, we're talking about like turn 8, you get to play the Torvia Warden and 2 of the charges. Assuming, once again, at that point, you actually get the buffed up ones. Because when you Gaia Frenzy, if you have like the 2 Stone Tusk Boars still in your deck, then you've got a 2 in 5 of actually drawing, a 3 and 5 of actually drawing them on the cards. It's a 3 and 5, and then if you get it, it's a 2 and 4. So yeah, there's obviously Torvia Warden can sometimes just not draw you the right cards if you don't actually draw your Stone Tusk Boars and you have to use the Unleash the Hounds, but it at least gives you some other kind of option there.
Yeah, I'm just like, it's like a combo deck, but not really a combo deck in a way.
Yeah, ultimately, I'm not really sure I see this kind of deck seeing play, but it's definitely an interesting experiment. And I mean, this is kind of what we were talking about with Gaia Frenzy, right? This deck is very much built around it, but ultimately, you kind of build this and you're like, I'm not really sure that this is maybe the right build, or that this is really the kind of deck that can work. There are some other combos out there with like Thunder Rhinos and uh, Angry Chicken to get some more damage. Possibly even like the Young Dragon Hawk I kind of toyed with as an option, and then you kind of have to give it charge with the Thunder Rhino. But ultimately, I kind of felt that just going a more aggressive route was going to result in more wins, and that's probably just because you'll win sometimes because Gaia Frenzy is buffing your minions on board and you can go face with them without actually always having to get the extra value from the Gaia Frenzy. So those are the three Hunter decks we have. Overall, where do you kind of see Hunter in the meta?
I think we can see it probably. I mean, I don't see Hunter being the top dog of the meta, but I do see it being like up there in terms of compared to playable decks, whether it's a mid-range version or whether it's a more secret-based version. Definitely I think there will be at least one or two relatively strong Hunter decks.
For me, I think that a large portion of Hunter's current power, pre or pre-Year of the Raven, is built around the Barnes Charge power, turn on turn 4. And losing those is definitely going to hurt. I think it's going to have to be built around the Spellstone in order to kind of see some good play. I think the Spellstone is by far the most powerful tool Hunters have. And there's a lot of answers to that as well. Dustbreaker is becoming less of an answer because there's less dragon synergy, so that helps the deck out a bit. And I think the Spellstone is really going to be the key card that determines how good Hunter's going to be. But it still sucks against Warlock where they have Hellfire, right? And
And Defile.
Yeah, Defile's a little bit trickier to sometimes get to work on the Spellstone, but Hellfire is a very clear answer to it. And Hagatha will also be an answer if the Spellstones come down later in the game. So I definitely think Hunter's not going to be in a particularly good place. I'd see it actually more towards the bottom of the meta unless the Spellstone proves strong enough to pretty much carry it alone. So yeah, I mean, that's all we have for Hunter. We'll make sure you check out the other classes. You can also follow us on Twitter at PandemoniaZA and at Deb_gaming. And then also please like and subscribe. And also just share the videos as much as you want. We really appreciate that. So until the next video, cheerio.
Cheers.